Universal Basic Income, or UBI, is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's the idea that government should provide a basic monthly income to every citizen. This basic income should be enough to allow people to function properly and not live below the poverty line. Let's suppose the poverty line is $1,000 a month for simple math. Anybody making less than $1,000 a month is considered living in poverty, and anybody above the line is not. Universal basic income theory would suggest that every person in that particular society be paid $1,000 so they are not living in poverty. On the surface, it looks like a fantastic idea, but there are some pros and cons to universal basic income theory. Supporters are quick to point out all the positives while ignoring all the negatives of UBI. Today, I invite you to walk with me as we explore this topic on a deeper level. Some of the arguments in support of a universal basic income sound good on the surface, but when we dig a little deeper, we quickly realize that things are not always as they seem. How about how we're all going to pay for this? It would cost about $2.14 trillion to pay people $11,945 a year, which is the current poverty level in the United States. From what I've heard, we could dissolve a few government programs such as welfare to help pay for it, but that would only cover $1 trillion a year. We would have to come up with the rest of that cost somewhere else. For the balance, there are a few options. Option one is we could always just print money every month and hope we don't cause hyperinflation. I mean, we're already in the middle of the greatest economic experiment of all time. Why not just keep printing that cash, crossing our fingers and hoping for the best? By the way, if you're concerned about inflation, check out my video on how you can prepare for inflation before it arrives. The other option on how we pay for universal basic income is to tax the wealthy, either by income taxes or by taking more property taxes. That way, those who own lots of residential real estate and commercial real estate can float the bill for everyone else. Have you ever heard of the entitlement mentality? Gee, I can't imagine why we're struggling with people feeling entitled in our country. We give out trophies to everybody, whether they win or lose, and now we're going to start passing out money for breathing? What? Hey guys, if you like learning about economics, finance, or making money, make sure that you subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our updates. The idea that you can take from the rich and give to the poor in order to facilitate a redistribution of wealth is a pipe dream. It's preposterous. You can't redistribute wealth, not really. The money will end up in the hands of the wealthy sooner or later because they know how money works and how wealth works. That's how they got it, and that's how they stayed wealthy. Until we teach wealth strategies in school, that's not going to change. But let's suppose for a moment we could somehow pay for universal basic income and get it implemented on a large scale. What would happen then? Supporters like to point out that if there was a basic universal income or universal basic income, it would allow people to hold out for better jobs or better wages because they wouldn't have to take jobs just for basic income, especially if it wasn't the right job for them. Now, if you have any kids or you understand human nature even a little bit, you know that this entire thing is a bad idea. Forget kids. Let's forget kids. Think of anybody. Give anybody something for nothing, and you take away their incentive to produce. There are millions of people in our country who would be happy to sit and watch TV, play on their phones, or play video games if you gave them just enough to eat and have a roof over their heads. They would never even look for a job. As technology increases, this problem will be magnified even more. For example, what happens when virtual reality becomes more common than television and we're paying people just for being alive with this universal income thing? People would sit in their virtual reality world and not even try to be productive. Am I the only one who's seen the movie Ready Player One? Heck, if I had that option when I was younger, to do something productive or to just sit around and get paid, I'd pick sit around every single time. I would have never went to college. I would have never been driven to succeed. And to be honest, I'd probably be living in a van down by the river. This entire UBI model would basically make work optional instead of required for many people. So what would happen then? Do you think most people would go to work if they didn't have to? People who are making good money at their jobs right now would probably still go to work because the universal basic income payment would be supplemental. Think doctors, lawyers, surgeons, high-paid contractors, managers, that type of thing. But people on the lower end of the spectrum, the lower end of the pay scale, would be more inclined to quit their jobs completely because it wouldn't be worth it to work in a job they hate. Without workers, supply and demand would plummet. It would push the wages up in those lower-level jobs in order for companies to fill the positions because they'd have to incentivize those positions. This would force business owners who own these businesses to raise their prices to the consumer so they can pay higher wages and still be able to make a profit. And as prices go up, it would make the $1,000 universal basic income payment go down in value. That's how inflation works. Again, if you're worried about inflation, check out my inflation video. But at the end of the day, people would be getting a check for $1,000 or whatever the price is, and it would eventually cause prices to rise until $1,000 wasn't enough. Then what? We raise it to $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. How high do we go? Do you see the problem here? Before we know it, we're in a cycle that keeps driving inflation up higher and higher and higher, and people are still in poverty. There are quite a few countries who have tried some form of basic income, such as Canada, Brazil, Finland, Iran, Spain, the Netherlands, and many more. Some have even reported successful implementation of the concept on a small scale. The problem is the experiments are flawed from the get-go. Many of the outcomes are things like participants reported feeling less stressed and less anxious. One study reported that participants felt more motivated and used the money to go back to school. So first of all, yes, if you gave me a monthly income on top of my current job for the next 2 years, I will feel less anxious as well. Everyone will. Go ahead and give me the survey now. I'll fill it out ahead of time before you even start sending me checks. I already know the answers because that's a dumb thing to track. But less anxiety doesn't lead to growth and fulfillment. Anyway, back to my point. That's just me ranting, and that's not why the studies are flawed. The studies are fundamentally flawed for 2 reasons. First, countries have done small-scale universal basic income theory experiments, but nobody has done universal basic income on a grand scale. Nobody has sent checks to everyone in their entire country every month. They've only done it to small groups or pockets of individuals. The second reason it's flawed is the time frame that these studies go on. You could give me a check equal to my salary for the next 5 years, and I wouldn't quit my job because I would see it as an opportunity for growth and an opportunity to get ahead. An opportunity that I could use to my advantage, which I'm sure that's what many of these people in the studies saw it as. Maybe I would use it to launch a business, pay off debt, or even go to college. Maybe I would use it for a vacation. But I wouldn't quit my job because I know the check's going to end eventually. Even if it's 5 years from now, even if it's 2 years from now, 7 years from now, 10 years from now, it doesn't matter. I know it's going to end. On the other hand, if you say you're going to guarantee me my monthly income forever until I breathe my last breath, well, that's an entirely different story. Historically, we haven't referred to that situation as universal basic income. Think about it. When the government sends you a check that can come very close to covering your monthly income, well, traditionally, we call that retirement. And people typically stop working when they retire because if they're working, they aren't really retired. The universal basic income theory would basically help people retire now instead of waiting until they're 65 or older. I guarantee you, if you give people their basic income, a large percentage of the population, me included, would remove themselves from the workforce. You may be thinking, oh well, so what? So a bunch of people aren't working. That doesn't sound too bad. Maybe I'll be one of them. Again, let's follow this rabbit trail and see what it means exactly. For one, nothing is free in this world. What's the incentive for people who continue to work hard and have larger and larger portions of their income siphoned off to prop up an entitled class of people who are doing nothing but freeloading? Those hardworking people won't stand for it. If you think they will, you're fooling yourself. You need to read Ayn Rand's book, Atlas Shrugged. Now, I'm not into objectivism, or whatever it's called, but that's a fantastic book. In the book, the producers pack up, ship out, and check out of society. It may not happen the way it did in the book, but people won't stand for working hard to support those who choose not to. Atlas Shrugged was written years ago, but it perfectly aligns with this topic, and I highly recommend it. I'll put a link in the description. Anyway, if we had universal basic income, it's not just the working group that would have problems. Let's talk about 2 things nobody ever talks about when it comes to UBI. Mental health and happiness. You can't truly be happy and content unless you're investing your time doing something productive. I know everyone thinks they will be, but that's not the case. Without a vision, the people perish. I'll say that again. Without a vision, people perish. There are so many good things that happen to a person psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually when they're forced to go out and make something happen. Challenges and failure are a necessary part of development. Could you fail at something? Yes. Will you fail at things? Yes. Everybody fails. It's part of the learning process. You can't experience true success unless there was a chance that you would fail. You can't feel true confidence unless you've been tested by life and have absolutely proven to yourself that you do have what it takes to succeed. You can't win without the possibility of losing, not really. Not everybody gets a trophy. We must stop the madness. Yes, poverty needs to be eradicated. But implementing a cloaked form of socialism is absolutely not the answer. So what is the answer? You know what? You tell me. Let's have an open dialogue in the comments. There's lots of people on YouTube. Everybody talk about it. I look forward to hearing your ideas. Everyone, please be civil when you disagree with someone. And after commenting, be sure to watch one of our other popular videos. And if you like learning about money, finance, and entrepreneurship, then be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.